Yeah, so I'm Dan Harrison, and I worked on a project at a recent hackathon, maybe about 3 weeks ago. That was sponsored by RocketRide and Neo4j, and I had an opportunity to build something that I'm calling Pathfinder. Um, the thing that's interesting about what's happening in the world right now is that a lot of people have to think about how do I upskill to think about AI and how AI is going to play a role in my life. And this is particularly true in the design profession. So if you think about how design has run over the years, it's always been shifting around, right? So we have to shift from the going from print to digital, and then thinking about like how do we deal with layouts and what happens when desktop publishing comes along, right? And things have matured, but now with the advent of AI, there's been a lot of shifting around, right? So in the design community, if you're a designer or a UX researcher or a content person, it's really sort of difficult to try and understand how do I prepare for this AI future that we're all heading into right now. Designers especially are being really impacted by a lot of the layoffs that are happening, it's really hard for people to try and understand. Like, I know this AI thing's important, but how do I upskill? How do I learn? So I wanted to share with you some examples of how this works, right? So there's a lot of overwhelming ambiguity. It's really hard to know, well, what skills should I learn? Should I focus on should I focus really hard on like one LLM? Should I take a course? It's really hard to do this when you can't come up with a one size fits all solution, because everybody who is in a design role has a slightly different set of skills and capabilities that they've earned over time, right? Or that they've been working on. I want to introduce you to Sarah. So Sarah, she's an expert UX researcher, but she's kind of trapped in this AI upskilling situation, right? So she's got 7 years of experience. She's really good at her job. She's really good at thinking about qualitative data and pattern recognition, but she doesn't know how to really think about AI. So she's bookmarked 14 courses trying to figure it out. She finished none of them. She feels kind of behind, and she's not sure how it works. But if you look at it, she already has a lot of the skills that are needed, the foundational things that could bring her into a role that actually does involve AI, where AI can take a role. But she doesn't have a map. She doesn't have the ability to see how that works. So this is where Pathfinder comes in, right? It allows you to kind of define your current role. It allows you to say where you're going, and then it provides a way for you to be able to figure out how can I get there? How do I actually upskill? And the way that we're doing it is I'm going to go over to the demo now so you can kind of see how this works. The nice thing about working with something like Neo4j is that you don't have to go with a regular SQL database, and you can tie different things together in a smart way where you can kind of make connections that maybe are harder to do if you're using older technology. So the idea here is that a designer can come in and they can say, okay, what's my current role? So I'm gonna choose I'm gonna choose UX designer, right? And it's gonna go ahead and it's gonna highlight all the things that most UX designers do, but it can be customized, right? So I can be like, I do all this stuff, but I also have some experience. I have some experience doing like some front end basic stuff, right? Using HTML, things like that. So now what I can do is I choose my target role, and I'm going to say I want to go from being a UX designer to being a design engineer. That seems to be like, at least right now in the month that we're in, that seems to be like the hot job that everybody's looking for. Because it's kind of combining the ability of the design skills with being able to actually build. So they're going to select this, and they're going to hit find my path. It's actually going to go, and it's going to be looking at that vector database and pulling all these different pieces of information in and trying to make sense of how her current skills, or how this person's current skills, could map to what's needed to move forward. And what this does is it actually generates a page like this that says, hey, you're already 67% of the way there. And if you look at what we've got on the left here, we're able to kind of visualize this is their current role, right? They're a UX designer. They want to get to a place where they can be an AI design engineer. That's their target. And if you look at the color coding here, these are the things that they already are good at, right? That will transfer to the new role. In orange are some of the things that they need to strengthen. They need to actually get some training and go from prototyping to generative UI design, for example, right? And then they have some net new skills that they need to learn, that they need to develop to be able to be available to be like take new roles on in the marketplace, or maybe upskill themselves so they can take a new role in the company that they're at. So it comes back and it gives you a personalized path that kind of tells you how you can move forward, what you need to do to make it happen, and it gives you a timeline. So if you work really hard, you can do this in 3 weeks part-time and be able to upskill to change the role that you're in. So the nice thing about this is that it does a really great mapping between what I'm doing now and what I want to do and how I can get there. And then the magic behind the scenes that really makes this happen is the ability to use RocketRide. So this is the RocketRide part that we have put together here. So you'll kind of notice that there's two inputs, right? We've got a webhook. So this is where it's actually pulling information directly from the app that you just saw. But there's also a chat source. So as I'm tweaking around with this and editing it, I can actually chat directly with the backend and try and see what kind of things come back, right? The way with this comes in, we've got an LLM that does the skill normalizer, right? So it actually takes in things and kind of formats them in a way that can be read by other systems. There's a skill matcher, which really ties into like the Neo4j database, and then a target resolver, which looks at the same thing. Like this one looks at the current skills, and this one looks at the future target skills. And the way that this flow is kind of set up is really great, because if this becomes a real thing that I want to build, I actually have the ability to think about what tools I want to use inside of my pipe, right? So let's say that there's some certain things that I want to do that I've determined that are really deterministic, right? And I might be able to use a cheaper LLM that can kind of take that on and do that without wasting a lot of tokens. But maybe I still need something like Claude, something that's probabilistic, to be able to kind of map those different things together and tell the story to that person about what it is that they actually need to do to make their job happen. So the thing that's great about RocketRide is that over time, I can maintain this structure, but I can change what it's connecting to. And, right now RocketRide has a lot of support for lots of different tools. And it'll allow me as a business to see, like, if this thing's going to scale, like I can start to play around with how I want to coordinate this and set it up, and how I can kind of visualize how it works and how I can tweak it in the future.